Welcome to the Expert in You podcast, the show for professional entrepreneurs, experts, authors, speakers, coaches, and consultants who are ready to elevate their business, expand their influence, and boost their bank accounts. Join us as we dive deep with industry-leading experts who share their top strategies, invaluable insights, practical tips, and personal experiences to help you achieve extraordinary growth and success. Whether you're looking to sharpen your skills, stay ahead of the curve, or find that competitive edge, this podcast is your ultimate resource for unlocking your full potential. So tune in, get inspired, grab your coffee, and let's unlock the expert in you. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Expert in You podcast. I'm your host, Dan Carden, and I have to tell you, I am really excited for my guest today. She is amazing. She's done some incredible things throughout her life, and she is a retina specialist and a surgeon, but she's also done a lot of things even in her childhood. So welcome to my show, Dr. Vivian Kim. How are you?
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for having me on this podcast, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about my varied interests.
I am so excited to talk to you because you are just doing amazing things in your practice, and we're going to get into that, how you have shifted your practice and become a trailblazer in your industry. But before we do that, you've done some really great things. You come from a big family. You've done some really great things in your childhood. And so I really want to start there. What were some of the things? Tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Okay, well, I am basically grew up in the Northeast. I am Korean American, born of Korean immigrants. And my father actually came over to do his surgical training as a cardiothoracic surgeon. Anyway, so I grew up in the suburbs of Connecticut, and I have to say it was a very insular upbringing because really all I did was study and actually practice the piano. So I have to, I am a self-confessed nerd, I have to say. And I can actually remember, I just saw my best friend from high school, and she will still remember the stories. And when she tried to call me to talk about some homework assignment, and my mother would answer the phone, typical tiger mom, and she could hear me practicing the piano in the background. And my mother would say, Vivian is not home. She didn't want to get interrupted and have me interrupt my piano practicing and get distracted by my friends. So I would practice 3 to 4 hours a day.
Wow.
The weekends, and on the school night, it was a mandatory 2 hours practicing every evening, no matter what.
Now, did you do anything with that skill, or was it just to learn it and practice, or did you do any kind of professional?
Well, I was a competition
there we go. Yes.
So I did compete and, won competitions where I would play, with an orchestra, after winning a competition. My big one was actually the Rock 2, not the Rock 3 that you often hear about and they've made movies about, but the Rachmaninoff Piano Concerto No. 2.
That's amazing. Now, you also have a big family. So your father was a thoracic cardiosurgeon, right? And he so you got this honestly as far as your medical career
Well,
and all
I
of
guess,
that.
yeah.
Yes. But you also have a lot of siblings as well. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
Yeah, I'm one of 6, actually. So it's actually a girl sandwich because my oldest is a brother, my youngest is a boy, and there were 4 girls in between. So it really was a girl sandwich. And it was the classic, heir and spare, trying to get the second boy, son. And I kept trying and got a bunch of girls in the middle. Pretty typical Asian culture.
I love it.
Right.
I love it. So, but then you went on to do competition ballroom dancing. So let's talk about that. How old were you when you did that, and what got you into that?
I actually was a very late bloomer in regards to this. So I was a classical concert piano, and I actually think that it helped me in my chosen career as a retina specialist, because the surgical skills that are involved in the microsurgery. So it was a very natural fit for me. But the dancing, I think the dancing is in my bones, I guess that you can call it, but just didn't have the chance to pursue it. So I was a late developer, and I started actually in my 40s. And the reason
Really?
I
Uh-huh.
started was I didn't like not knowing what I was doing. When I went to a salsa club one year, and I
Mm-hmm.
was there trying to figure out how to do the salsa dance and not liking the fact that I couldn't figure it out. And I didn't like leading. I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't like following
Mm-hmm.
a gentleman's lead. So I figured I needed to learn it so I could be in the know. And that was my start in ballroom dancing. And I
You know,
started actually quite late, even though I
I'm
felt like
seeing
it could have been
themes
a
here.
career.
I'm seeing themes here. She's an overachiever. She's also a trailblazer, and she doesn't like to not do things well. That's same thing as an
Well,
overachiever. But yeah, you've really done a lot of amazing things. So then, at what point did you decide you wanted to get into medicine and become a doctor and a surgeon? How did that all transpire?
well, I think I just must have gotten that love of it from osmosis. I just knew. I never had a thought process of wondering what I should do because I think the
Mm,
love was in there of medicine. I can remember my father's textbooks. In those days, there was no internet. So he literally had these very thick textbooks, 3, 4 inches thick, lying
mm-hmm,
open because he was studying for his board examination. And I would see the picture. Since he was a surgeon, I would see actually major reconstructive surgery of babies that were born with
mm-hmm.
deformities and surgical techniques to repair those. And I would be fascinated and actually look at the before and after pictures. And I'd see all the red underlying, no highlighters in those days either, the red
Right.
underlying pen. And I just was fascinated. So that was a natural. There was no thinking when it came to what should I do when I graduate
Mhm.
from school. And so it was a natural path.
How did you decide to go into retina specialty
That's
and then
interesting that you asked you there because at
yes.
that point I do remember thinking, what should I do? Because all of medicine was interesting. So when I
Mm-hmm.
came to picking my specialty with ophthalmology, it was a difficult choice because everything I did it was fascinating and interesting. And I
Mm-hmm.
think ophthalmology gives you the best combination of doing care in a general sense where you have patients that consider you as their eye doctor and so
Right.
continuity with the patients, but you're also a surgeon because the things you fix surgically. So it was that blend of wanting to be a surgeon and loving surgery, but also wanting to have that care in the sense of like primary care doctors have a patient base where they become a part of the family essentially, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that makes sense. When you think about just like a general physician, they really don't do surgery and things like that.
That's right.
Right.
But
So,
it is like
okay.
general, I mean, being a general ophthalmologist is like being like a primary care for eyes. And then the
Yes.
surgery part is just that additional skill set, of course, to fix,
Right.
they have to be fixed surgically. And then retina, because no, retina is a subspecialty of ophthalmology. So it requires additional training, 2 years of training.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I loved the retina, and I decided to do that as a subspecialty because it's very visual. I found I was very good at it just right off the bat, and I was seeing
Mm-hmm.
things in a very difficult to see space. Can you imagine the little postage stamp that's in that
Not at all.
4 cc's of space that your eyeball that constitutes your
Right.
eyeball, and being able to see what's going on there and seeing the problems and being able to fix it. And the surgery inside that little 4 cc
Right.
ball is the microsurgery.
So how long were you an ophthalmologist before you decided to really specialize in retina?
Oh, actually, after you finish your general training in ophthalmology, which is a 3-year training program after 1 year of internship, it's
Mm-hmm.
an additional 2 years. So it's continuous.
Okay.
You just go
Okay.
from one to the next as you decide what you'd like to really hone in on as a
Mm-hmm.
specialty.
Okay.
And then after that, you get out and you work.
Yes. So you worked for it for another medical profession for a long time, several years, from what I
Right. I was
understand.
actually part of a multi-specialty
Hmm.
ophthalmology group
Okay.
for 16 years until I decided to strike out on my own in solo practice.
Okay. And that's a lot of what we want to talk about because you found out some things, but while being in the healthcare space, you found out a lot of things are not quite what they're, cracked up to be, so to speak. And
That's
you
right.
found out that there were a lot of issues and a lot of problems and things that you had to overcome. And then when you got into your practice, and we'll talk a little bit about that, what that all looked like and what you've been able to do in your practice, which is really what's bringing us to this
Right.
podcast. So talk about some of the problems that are out there right now in the healthcare space and what doctors are facing and the burnout and those kinds of things and the things that you experienced as well.
Right. I actually was, so in my 16 years of working with this multi-specialty group, it was a wonderful group of people that I started out with, and I was getting very busy doing the retina specialty treatments of the patients of this ophthalmology practice. And it just got busier and busier. I think as time goes on, there's the aging baby boomers, there's just more disease, and there's actually more innovation with pharmacology and pharmacologic drugs that made the application and the delivery of these treatments. Now, it's great because there is these new treatments, but it just makes the provider and the provider of these treatments just busier. So I was just getting busier and busier. I was seeing up to 80 to 100 patients a day.
Wow,
And
that's a
just
lot.
imagine when you're younger, it's like a challenge, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
love a good challenge. I think we all do. We have that all the adrenaline, and it really hones your skills and focuses your mental efforts.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always found that to be something that could be aspired to, but I find after a while it's going to take a toll, right?
Right.
First and foremost, something's got to give, like that movie with Jack Nicholson. So it's going to be either your attention to the patient,
Mm-hmm.
time, even your own physical energy, the time
Right.
you give to your family, and what happens after work hours are done.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really unrelenting. And now they talk about burnout, but I think when I was in the throes of that practice model, burnout wasn't as common a word then. Now they say that
Right.
50% of doctors are burned out. And this is even as young as, physicians that are just leaving their residency are already recognizing that they're burned out just by the sheer number of years of the training that they have to
Now,
go.
has it gotten worse over the years, though, as time has gone on? There's less and less doctors and physicians
Right. So
that
there
are
is a
out there,
shortage.
and
It's acknowledged by the American Medical Association that there is going to be a physician shortage. Even COVID has thrown physicians into a higher level of burnout, and
mm,
in five healthcare practitioners,
mm-hmm,
including nurses, are deemed and thought to retire in the next, well, that was a couple of years ago. So already in the next maybe 3 years. So not only is there a shortage in the providers as they're aging, they're probably retiring earlier than they would without the burnout.
mm-hmm,
It also looks like we're not going to have the same number of doctors coming up in the ranks, the younger doctors
right,
coming up, because it's becoming a specialty that has a reputation of needing a huge commitment, lots of time, and yet
mm-hmm,
the satisfaction may not be there as much as it used to be. And it's sad to say because I consider the medical field to be a helping profession, and there's such a great satisfaction in helping patients
right,
through everything that we all consider to be a right, which is health, right, and well-being.
mm-hmm,
And certainly there's a need for those professionals, but I think that the shortage is going to cause problems with the delivery model, and everything, cost of healthcare, access to
right,
healthcare is going to become a big problem and is a big problem currently.
yeah.
That
We
we're all
really
trying to find
do
solutions.
need a reform in our healthcare, I believe.
And yet healthcare is actually probably a very conservative sector, and
Mm-hmm,
it probably takes the longest. It doesn't pivot as quickly as maybe
right,
small businesses would and other industries like
right,
technology, right? Lots
right,
of pivoting,
right.
lots of
Yeah,
changes that are happening, especially
that's
with the
so fast.
artificial
We can't keep up, right?
so
And that's
fast, and yet in
that's
healthcare we don't have the ability, and a lot because of the regulations. And I think the group of people that tend to go into medicine, I think we're a conservative bunch.
mm-hmm,
We're very much used to following a pathway that has been preset before us. It's a long one, but we know the pathway. It's so many years of school, passing
mm-hmm,
so many tests. Then you go to
right.
the next stage, and it's set before you. So there's not a lot of innovation or thinking about this. It is what
Mm-hmm.
it is. And you'll definitely see that the older doctors will, when I was a young whippersnapper, this is what we did. And they expect the
Right.
next generation to do the same without questioning its validity and its usefulness and whether it needs to change. So this is part of the culture of medicine that we have to fight not only externally, but also internally. So it's a problem that's continued even by the own people that are beset by the problems,
Right.
the healthcare providers.
So you left the group that you were with and you decided to start your own practice. And we know that with a practice come a lot of responsibilities that you didn't probably have when you were working for a group. You have to learn how to do everything, right? All the medical coding and the insurance side of it, and just anything and everything that goes along with being an entrepreneur, because that is what you are doing. Hi, friend. I have an exciting announcement. I hope you're enjoying this episode of Expert in You podcast, but I have to ask you, have you checked out the latest issue of Expert in You magazine yet? It's jam-packed with rich content, powerful strategies, inspiring stories, and so much more to help you elevate your business and personal growth. Don't miss out. Go grab your digital copy now and join our community of experts making a difference every day. Go to expertinyoumagazine.com and check out your digital copy today. Transform your expertise into success with Expert in You magazine. It's not just a publication, it is a movement. So talk about, through the years, you've been doing that 6 or 7 years. Is that right? Six or seven. And then you decided to actually make a shift and a pivot in your business, in your practice, but you didn't exactly know if it could be done because it had never been done in a specialty practice. And that is, you created a concierge model in a specialty practice. And to your knowledge, you don't know anyone who has done that. And so you're blazing a trail. Let's talk about that.
Well, it's interesting because and to say, and I'm only saying this to make a point again about our culture in healthcare, that I ended up leaving this multi-specialty practice because as much as I was so fortunate to have a great group of people and an organization that really worked hard to treat its patient base, but I started not getting along with my partners. So, and it's an illustration, and of course, partly due to my own immaturity and the ability of myself and my fellow partners to be able to communicate well in conflict. I find that this is kind of symptomatic, I think, of healthcare in general and physicians in general and organizations in general that may not lead to the most ideal outcomes. And it's part of the problem, I think, why we're not able to fix the problems that happen in healthcare, because you need to really have good communication amongst a group of people that may not have the same viewpoints and same values. I mean, look at politics. I mean, it really is a problem.
Oh gosh, I was just thinking that when you said that. I was just thinking this is a perfect example of what we see.
So I did end up leaving because I didn't have the maturity and the skills to actually resolve those problems. And so I thought I would strike on my own and do things my way. And so I opened my solo traditional practice at that time. And even then, that was considered a little bit off the beaten track because everything in medicine is now about consolidation and getting bigger and bigger because there's more, I guess, clout and power in bigger organizations in terms of negotiations and all that with insurance companies. So I did the opposite by pulling away and going into solo. But that went very well. And so I got busier and busier. And I realized, again, I was falling into the same model that I had at my other practice where the volume was just becoming more and more, not because I wanted the volume to be more and more, but it's just inevitable because of the needs of the patient population.
Right. Just the evolution of it.
If there's not enough, providers to do this. So I wanted to come up with, and I realized I was spending less and less time with each patient. And frankly, I was afraid that there would be a mistake or something would happen where the patients aren't getting the best outcome. So I decided, and I looked around, I'm thinking there's got to be a better way to deliver the healthcare. And I'm just thinking about my small space, right? I'm not thinking that I'm going to change medicine, right? Or the world, right? I just want to change my small area of my life. And
Mm-hmm.
I looked around and I felt that I was providing a concierge level of service in my practice, my boutique practice, which was why it was growing so quickly. So I wanted to see what that would look like and if that would be possible. And when I did look around, I didn't see any models of it in ophthalmology and certainly not in retina.
Mm-hmm.
So I even looked at and attended conferences. There's this great concierge medicine forum conference in Atlanta every year, and I went and I attended that, hoping to find somebody and get some ideas. But what once again came up with, well, we don't know, we don't have any examples in ophthalmology. We don't
Mm-hmm.
know if it really would work. How would that look like? And I think the difficulty was that in primary care, there's no surgery. A lot of
Right.
it is the patient and doctor relationship and interaction, and it's the cerebral thinking of all the medical issues. But in surgery, there's actually a surgical procedure, and there's a whole different skill set there.
Mm-hmm.
The model works a little differently for surgeons in terms of like reimbursement and all that. So it
Right.
was how to mix those two aspects of delivering medical and surgical care that I wasn't seeing that model in. So I just decided that after getting the ideas in general of what concierge looks like, which is delivering more high touch care,
Right.
just had to adapt and innovate and decide how it would be applicable to a retina practice. And that's
And
what
it
I did
took you
starting about 3 years ago.
about a year to transition. Is that about
It took,
right?
right. And that's just me. It doesn't have to
Mm-hmm.
be that slow. It just takes a while to get everybody on board and understanding what is happening. I have
Sure.
5,000 patients in my patient base, and to get the communication out there and getting them actually segued into the new model, or
Right.
having them say, well, maybe this is not for me, and then having to, pass them on to another provider. So it
And
took a
you
while.
really did reinvent the wheel. I mean, as far as there, again, you didn't have someone you could go to help you really speed that success. You had to kind of figure this model out
That's
and
right.
create really your own system for that.
Yeah, I don't think I mean, I can't say that I did it all on my own. I think you always learn from the ones before you. I mean, concierge
Sure.
medicine has been around since the 1990s, probably.
Hmm.
So that's really already 30 plus years, mostly in internal medicine or family practice. But you
Hmm.
still learn and have the lessons that you can apply. And
Sure.
any innovation actually is just is not a new idea. It's an old idea that's been reworked, right?
Right, right,
Yeah.
exactly. So you've been able to transition very successfully, and now you are going to be teaching other specialists how they can transition their practice as well and have a concierge model. But I want to talk about what happened for you when you actually transitioned into a concierge model. Let's talk about the freedom that you gained from that,
Right.
what your patients have to say about that, and just overall your happiness with your practice. So I want to talk about like all the benefits that you have seen.
Right. I think, I mean, right off the bat, which is what you would presume, is that with more time, right, you're seeing way less patients, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then so you have more time to spend with them. You schedule the patients further apart. And I used to schedule like 3 patients every 15 minutes, and now I schedule them one every 30 minutes.
Right.
So you can imagine that you can slow way down and talk to the patient, see them holistically. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's interesting, like with time and thought, things come to you that might not be immediately apparent, right? And I think
Right.
in that space of thought that you have the chance of doing better. And that's what you want for your patient.
Right.
And then, of course, being able to do that. I mean, that's such a great feeling not to be rushed from one room to
Mm-hmm.
the other, right? And then being
Right.
lost at the end of the day. So then you have the idea. So I think one of the biggest changes, I think my patients, of course, love it. They come in, we're like a family. They come in right
Right.
away. They're not even sitting down in the reception room, and they get to sit, and they actually even get to shoot the breeze. We get to know their personal lives a little bit more. But better than that, I mean, they come in, they can ask all the questions they want about their healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And I can educate them more about why they get this injection, what it means,
Right.
and talk about the nuances that I wouldn't even have time to share of my specialty. And it's not for every patient, but some patients love the detail because then they actually can participate in their own care. They take
Right.
charge. I mean, if I actually even deviate from my usual protocol, they're able to pick it up. Wait, not what you usually do, because they are so trained and they know now because they are able to pay attention. They know what's going on with their own
Right.
care because I've shared my pattern and management with them. So when
Mm-hmm.
I look like I'm deviating, they're like, "Hey, Dr. Kim, wait, why are you doing this one differently?" So, and I think that's great. When I'm saying,
Right.
this is great. This is a patient who now is self-involved in their care and taking
Yes.
charge, right?
Yes. I love
And
that.
now they're able to help me it's a relationship. They're helping me in the participation of their care, which is
Right.
great.
It
I think
is.
that's great.
It is, and they have to love that. I mean, one of the biggest frustrations in when you need to see a doctor or a physician is not being able to get in, the long wait times,
Right,
that, those are all problems that we all struggle with. And then to
right,
to feel like you're really kind of herded through like cattle
right.
with
I mean, can you
not
imagine
any
like
time.
you see one doctor and they tell you have a surgical problem, and then the next day you're in surgery with a different doctor?
Right.
Where's the continuity there? And this
Right.
happens, and practices are trying to fit in all the patients in the most efficient way without burning out the physicians. But
Hmm.
that's not an ideal continuity of care model, right?
Right. But you also had some really incredible stories that you had shared with me on things that you caught, things that you caught in people's health that you would not have had time to really dig into before, or maybe even notice. And one particular story that you shared, and I would love for you to share it with the audience, was the woman that was in a wheelchair. Would you
Right.
tell that story? And this is what happened as a result of you slowing down, having more time with your patients and getting to know them and building that relationship and looking at things holistically. So go ahead and share that story.
Right. So I had a patient who had a diagnosis that was neurologic, not my
Hmm.
area. So even though they joked that the retina is part of the brain, but so between one visit to the next, which is only a space of a couple months, she was a walking, would walk in, and then all of a sudden she was in a wheelchair. And I asked her what that transition, why all of a sudden the wheelchair? Did she break her leg? Did she fall? Right. Fall risk is a big thing with elderly patients.
Hmm.
So she said, no, it just seems to be like my neurologic issue, neuropathy has gotten worse. And so she wasn't able to feel the floor. And so then she was stumbling more and couldn't find her balance. So then she's in the wheelchair. And I'm saying, well, that's a big change in 2 months because typically these things progress a little bit slower. And
Hmm.
especially since they never told her what the origin of why she had this problem. This is a very common problem seen in diabetics, but she was not a diabetic. She was elderly, but not diabetic. So it just struck me like in the back of my head as I'm treating her eyeball that this doesn't really seem to be usual. And she actually had very involved family members that were
Hmm.
part of her care and would bring her in. So this woman was in her like late 80s, close to 90. So I said to the family members, I think maybe it might be worthwhile to get a second opinion to see about this because number one, I as a doctor was not receiving good answers when I asked my questions because it wasn't making sense to me as a medical doctor, though it's not my area of specialty. And certainly sometimes we're just as ignorant as the lay public. But because something seemed off, a little like warning bell was ringing in the back of her head, I did encourage them to get a second opinion, which they did. And it took 6 months to get the second opinion. So again, the
Wow.
access to the expert care was sad, but they persisted. And
Hmm.
ultimately, she didn't just have this unknown etiology. She actually had a spinal cord tumor pressing on her lower back that caused her progressing neuropathy. And once she had surgery, she was on her way to recovery. I mean, it was
Isn't it
long and slow. It
something?
was slow, but the doctor was very optimistic about the cure. And now she's like able to walk. I
Oh
mean,
my
it was just, if
gosh.
it had just gone on and on, they would have accepted this. And then it would have led to like
Right.
lower extremity paralysis eventually, ultimately.
Right.
And instead, they found a solution, an answer and a solution and then a cure.
Right.
So I felt good about that because this was not in my, wheelhouse, obviously, as a retina specialist. But I think, and in being able to pay attention, I think this is anybody. I think parents,
Right.
children,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
You
and the
have to have time. We
wonderful
say
thing,
this, entrepreneurs, they have to have thinking time. They have to have time where they slow
that's
down
right.
and they think about what they're doing. So yes, absolutely.
This is actually one of the benefits, and that, funny that you say that, but I did it, and it took me like a few years into this concierge journey for even myself to realize, because I was dealing with the transition, I was dealing
Right.
with the new model, and how does it feel, how does it work, and figuring out the logistics.
Right.
And once I was able to step back in this new schedule, I realized that I, as a doctor and an entrepreneur, had so much more time in my brain to be more creative, to be
Mm-hmm.
actually more innovative, and to think outside that box and to think of new things. So I don't feel like I'm there yet in terms of all the offerings and all the things that I can make my practice great. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's an evolution.
Yeah, sure.
We
Like
have to have
anything.
time to evolve
Yes.
and to do all that creative space. There's a lot of thinking space involved in it. We don't as doctors that are like pressed, to see a patient every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or whatever it is. And if we're doing that 8 to 10, 12 hours a day, where do you have the space then to be
You
creative?
don't. You have no
Oh,
energy, you have no time, and you're just exhausted and you're just on overdrive
right.
all
And
the
it's not
time.
even just for your, special, it's also for your family. It's also for your
Right.
kids, right? It's also for your community around you. Your creativity answers a lot of things in your world that you have no idea where that spark is going to come from. But if you don't have time in your brain,
Right.
it's not going to happen. And we're all living like this.
And but one of the things that I really love, and let's talk about this a little bit more, is you travel now quite a bit where you
Right.
did not do that before.
Right.
Your father recently suffered with some health issues, and you were able to take the time off to be with him.
Right.
And so you have seen it show up in your personal life that you have been able to do
Right. Of
so much
course.
more, continue your personal growth and your personal journey. And now you're going to be starting this coaching program to
Right.
help other specialists, really ophthalmologists in particular, retina specialists, roll into a concierge model if they choose to do that. And you're going to be launching that actually in January 2025. But I want to talk about the model. It's very creative. And it's really 6 steps that you're going to take people through, but you're going to give them all of your templates, your support, your guidance. They'll be
Right.
able to collaborate with other people that are doing the same thing and really build out their concierge practice. Talk about your caring program.
Well, I mean, I feel like other doctors and retina specialists have reached out to me either through the conference. I've met just a handful that somehow realized I was doing this either through word of mouth. And so they've been
Mhm.
reaching out, interested in knowing, well, what's the basics of it? And I realized
Right.
that I need to get the word out there because not that I consider my model the end all and be all, but I think people need to be encouraged and my colleagues need to be encouraged that there is another way to practice retina, practice
Right.
ophthalmology, practice medicine ultimately.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a great example. I love the traveling, not because I'm not a travel hacker, but when I am traveling, it's because I'm usually going to some conference that I never would have had the time to before
Mhm.
because of the patient care responsibilities. I mean, I would have suffered before and after because I'd be crunching all the patients that needed to be seen
Right.
after. So that's not relaxing at all. So you're
Right.
coming back into the super busy schedule. But now I can get to go and I go to these conferences, like I go to a marketing conference, let's say, or I go to a
Mhm.
personal finance conference, and you're always getting ideas, not about the topic of the conference, but because you meet people, you talk,
Sure.
you get new ideas. And then
Mm.
even if they're starting another business, whatever that business in, it's the methodology that you're learning from. So you can get ideas from anything, right?
Sure.
Right. Whether it's a gift idea, like, and now Christmas is coming and I'm like struggling to think, oh, what am I going to get for my dear friend? Who doesn't need anything. Right. And
Right.
so then you go somewhere and I'm finding out fairs, right? These
Mhm.
Christmas markets. And
Right.
you know you're going to get an idea there of something new or something
Wow,
because
it
it's a
sounds like you
small
have a
business.
personal life. Oh my goodness.
Right. So
Look
there's a
at
small business
that.
there of doing something really innovative or something
Right.
creative. And I'm like, that's the joy. That's the joy. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the excitement of when you have time to look at what's out there that's not in your little like lane.
In your little bubble, right?
That's right, in the bubble or lane,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
So,
I do a lot of that now. And so my course is really about showing people a path that
right.
if you make this change in your life and your practice, this is where your life is going to be. And it's not
Mhm.
that your change is going to be exactly like my change, but it's like to give the courage and a template,
Right.
create a new practice so that then all those other things that I have been finding for myself will be then available to that person.
Right. Well, and that is really where your heart and your passion is around this, because you've been able to find a new way, a different way forward. And so now you want to share that with other people. The great thing about that is it's going to better their life, but you're also going to be the shortcut for them. They are not going to have to go through everything you went through to try to
That's right.
figure out how to make this model work in
Right.
your practice with the surgery, with the general
And they'll probably be able to do it better. And isn't that the great thing?
yes, and they'll have the
Every
support and the
generation,
collaboration, yeah,
right,
of
makes
everyone.
it better,
Yes,
right?
the ideas that will come out of
Right,
that collaborative, because you're going to run a small group, and the
right,
ideas that will come out of that collaboration when people start implementing is going to be phenomenal, which is going to continue to make your program even stronger and better, because you're going to have a lot of different experiences with people doing this
right.
in their practice. So I'm excited for you to launch this. You already did speak on a stage around it and shared that you what you had done, but yeah, she's really had people kind of beating down her door wanting to
Well, I mean, I would,
know.
okay,
Yes.
but I mean, it's like in everything, how do you get the message out there, right?
Yes.
It doesn't matter how good the idea is, but you really, I mean, we are in an attention deficit society right now,
Right.
right? Thanks
Right.
to social media and everything. But how do you use those same tools to try to
Hmm.
get a message out for the good, right? And that's what
Yes.
I'm excited about. I'm actually even learning all those things because social media is totally new to me, right?
Yes.
I'm,
Yes.
the
There's a
older
lot to learn.
generation, but I'm ready
Yeah.
to embrace it too, because you always have to challenge your
Hmm.
fixed beliefs, right?
Yes.
I think that makes people have always have to be open to the other side, opposing beliefs, right?
Yeah.
And you have to find a way together to make it all work together, right?
Well,
So,
you are a brilliant woman. It's
right.
going to be amazing. I just know.
That's very kind of you to say so, and I appreciate it.
So, all right. Well, how can people get a hold of you? And then, by the way, we will put all of her information in the show notes, but how can people reach you?
Well, my LinkedIn profile,
Hmm.
okay, under Vivian Kim, MD, and then of course my email. You can always email me at my email, which is Dr. Kim, DRKIM, at
Hmm.
arcretina.com, ARCRETINA.com.
Great. And also, if you are inquiring about her concierge, make sure you put that in the subject line so that she will see that in the email and it won't get buried or lost when that comes through.
That's
Because,
right. We're
yes,
still having a lot of emails come in, right?
yes, yes.
The attention
Um,
deficit economy, as you said, as I said.
Absolutely. This has been so great. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for sharing your journey and your a little bit about your childhood and your family, and just really appreciate that you were so open with us today. And I can't wait for this to get out there for everyone to hear. So thank you
And
again.
thank you, Anne. I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the interest and you being able to share that message with me.
Absolutely. You're welcome. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful day. And until next time, make sure you subscribe to the show, share it, because sharing is caring, and go rock your business. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for tuning in today. If you're as excited as I am about scaling up your influence, business, and bank account, then I have just the thing for you. But first, make sure you subscribe to the show. Second, make sure you share it with someone you care about, because sharing is caring. And third, head on over to join me in my next free virtual exclusive workshop, where we'll explore proven strategies to boost your business and maximize your potential. Look, it doesn't matter if you're just starting out or if you're looking to take your business to the next level, my workshops are designed for you. So head on over to expertinyouworkshop.com to reserve your spot and get ready to transform your expertise into extraordinary success. I'm looking forward to seeing you there and helping you achieve incredible growth. Until next time, make sure you're always seeking the expert in you, and God bless. Have an amazing day.